So we're recording now. Zoe, hi Zoe. Anna is from the USA. Zoe, you're watching from Wiltshire in the UK. What time is it there? Greece. Wow. Artemis is from Greece. I don't know, midnight. Zoe, if you fall asleep, I can send out the recording as well if that's like because I know I would be fast asleep. Belgium. So Stephanie, it must be, I'm going to say either 11 or 1 because I think you're an hour out of the UK. So if you fall asleep too, we can certainly send out the replay. Yeah, cool. Here it's 2 a.m., 2 in the morning. Oh my goodness, Artemis. Well, again, if you fall asleep, we understand. We understand. But thank you all for joining us. We might as well get started. We're going to be talking about, well, rescue dogs really, but Jenny will tell us a little bit about herself first. Thank you. I hope everyone's enjoying the summit. I hope you've got some really amazing takeaways from what you've seen so far. And Jenny will be on. Jenny, you are going to be on day four. So we are currently on day 2. So Jenny's talk is on day 4. But before we get to that, Jenny, thank you for joining us. Maybe before we get started on the topic, you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hello. Well, first, I'd like to say that I am so enjoying the summit. I really am enjoying the summit. There's been some great speakers, and yeah, so I'm sort of getting through them today as well. So, hi everyone. I'm from Brisbane, and I have a few businesses. So, I guess they all fall under the umbrella of the Complete Pet Company. But I also have Complete Canine Communication, the future of dog training. So that's working very holistically with dogs. It's not really training as such. It's more understanding the dog and teaching people to live in harmony with their dog. I also have the Naked Harness, which is an HY style harness that we designed, and it's doing very well in this country as well. And Heal by Choice. And Heal by Choice is working with dogs through applied zoopharmacognosy, which is Nessa's favorite word.
I can't say it. Okay, leave me alone.
And so that's working with dogs through
Oh, we've jammed up.
Selection by using plants. Yeah, sorry?
Oh, you just froze. I don't know if it's me or you.
Oh, it's probably me. I hope I don't freeze. I was on one the other night and we kept dropping out.
Oh no.
Yeah, and we also manufacture a raw food, the complete meal, and I've been doing that for 20 something years. So I'm very involved with all a completely natural approach. So my business is a completely natural approach to working with dogs and cats.
Yeah, right. And I love that you take a holistic view, because when we're trying to help dogs with behavior, that it's, we can look at one aspect of what the issue is, but if we can actually look at the bigger picture, it's so much more helpful in resolving the issue. Zoe says she loves a holistic approach. But we are going to be talking about life beyond the shelter and rebuilding the trust. So what drew you to this topic, and why? What are we? I'm assuming we're talking about shelter dogs and rescue dogs and adopting new dogs, bringing them into our home, and unfortunately, they don't always come as the perfect dog. They often have some trauma or some behavioural issues or or health issues. So maybe talk us through that. And at the once we've had a chat, we'll get people to ask, they can put their hands up or ask questions. Maybe we'll start with the chat function first, and then yeah, go on.
Yeah, okay. So I guess what actually got me or why I'm so passionate about surrendered dogs. I try not to call them rescue, I guess, because we don't really rescue them. But they are dogs that have been let down. in, some way or shape or form. They're not broken. They've just been let down, and something has happened in their life, some sort of circumstance that has you know led them to not being wanted anymore and put through shelters. So I guess probably my best way of explaining it is a little story that started my journey. And that was many, many years ago when I was an inspector with the RSPCA in New South Wales, and I was called out to a house with a whole lot of surrendered animals in it, not just dogs. There were 3 dogs, but there were cats and birds and fish and mice and all sorts of things. And
Wow.
one of the dogs that really played on my heartstrings was a Great Dane, and she was actually locked in a laundry and left there to die. And she was
Oh,
just surviving on her own feces and urine by the time I got there.
oh my
And
goodness.
moving forward, the case went, to court, and she was surrendered to the RSPCA. And I actually decided that I was going to find her a home, and she ended up going to a property out near where I come from. I grew up on the land, and she lived a wonderful life, and her name was Freya. But I fell in love with the Dane. So I spent 10 years studying the Great Dane then, and always said that I would have one, but I wasn't in the position at that stage to have one. And then when I moved to Brisbane, I thought, okay, I'm going to get a Great Dane. So I contacted Great Dane Rescue, and I hounded June Hales, who is passed away now. But I hounded her day after day after day because, I was led to believe that these dogs, these Great Danes, are gentle giants. And eventually I got a phone call saying, we've got a dog for you. So I didn't care whether it was a male or female, didn't care about the age or the color or anything else. I just wanted a Dane. And of
Mm.
course, I went and got this Great Dane who was 86 kilos. I was 54 kilos. And he was a nightmare. There was nothing gentle about this giant at all. And he's the one that sort of led me on my journey to nutrition and behavior and everything else. So I guess that's where my journey started with, taking on surrendered dogs. And since then, I was just thinking this morning, I've never actually bought an animal in my life. I have ex-battery hens. I've got a big flight aviary where I've taken on birds that have lived in cages. And of course, I have 5 beautiful dogs here now and 22 that have passed away. And they've all been second, third, fourth, fifth hand dogs.
Oh,
So I guess that's why I'm just so passionate about giving these dogs a second chance at life. Mm.
yeah. What sort of struggles do you think these dogs have, health-wise and behaviorally as well?
Oh wow! And I've got Nerida Heppel sitting there, so I know Nerida very well, and she's been very much a part of my journey as far as rescue dogs go. Um, Lots of things. So in my experience, just with my own dogs and dogs that I've worked with, is fear, lack of trust, aggression, separation related problems, um, mechanical problems due to malnutrition. So diet, they've really struggled, abuse, physical and emotional, just about every single thing that you could think of, these dogs go through. And it also depends on how long they're in the shelters for, or in the foster homes for, how long they've been passed backwards and forwards. For example, I've got little Phyllis Lorraine here, and she went through, I think, 4 or 5 homes before I actually took her. So, they get bounced backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. So they become these yo-yo dogs as well. So they're really lost and misplaced. Um, yeah, then we get, the dogs that are shut down, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder as well. And I see a lot of that too. And they're just misunderstood. So loads of different things. And sadly, a lot of, in my experience, again, a lot of surrendered dogs that go into homes don't live a long life, or, you know, a lot of them, because they have so many ailments like joint problems and growth development as well. Yeah.
Before I ask another question, if anybody's got any questions, maybe start typing them in the chat. And then if you're like Artemis and you are up at 2 a.m. in the morning, you can write your question, we can answer it, and you can go back to sleep, and I'll send out the recording. But yeah, write your questions while we're chatting, and then we can just go down through them one by one. But Jenny, yeah, so I actually was volunteering at a shelter at one point, and it was interesting. I mean, most of the dogs, I would say 80% of the dogs that were in there were teenagers. You know, they were surrendered as teenagers because of, you know, if the guardian hasn't put the work in, and then the teenager starts acting out and they don't have the capacity for whatever reason to do the training, then they may surrender them. But what I also saw a lot of was the dog being adopted into the new home and then being brought back. And I can imagine, I can't imagine what it must be like, what that dog is internalizing. Do you think maybe you could talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting. A few years ago, I did a bit of a survey around Australia. I contacted 25 shelters to find out, you know, a little bit about what sort of stats they had on how many dogs were brought through the shelter in that time, how many were adopted out, how many were returned, and what happened to the others. And it was quite interesting. I only had 5 shelters return my request, so I could only work on 5 different, you know, shelters. And I put that presentation together, and obviously I didn't name the shelters at all. But I was really quite alarmed that, you know, the number of dogs through the large shelters that were euthanized in that period, it was quite horrific. And most of those were behavioural problems. The other ones, you know, they were adopted out, and some were returned to that shelter. Some were taken to other shelters. Some they didn't know what happened to. So yeah, it's quite alarming as to what's going on with these dogs when they do, you know, go into these places. I know, you know, in Australia, we have a really alarming number of dogs going through rescue, whether that be through private organisations or large, you know, council-run, government-run organisations as well. And, you know, they're dealing with a problem that is difficult because, you know, they don't have the funding and they don't have the homes to put these dogs into. And so if dogs are put into shelters, rather so than homes, that's really difficult because they're, you know, they're put into pens and they don't have, you know, the ability to be able to express themselves, to be able to do what they would naturally do. So it really is quite alarming. And the ages, you're quite right, Ness, they seem to be around that sort of adolescent age coming into, you know, sort of 8, 9 months of age seems to be for, you know, your average dog. Your larger bred dogs are, you know, your larger breed dogs is probably a little bit older because they develop a little bit slower. But it seems to be around that period of time where they're changing and they're becoming more independent, and they're wanting to say no. And they don't agree with everything that they're made to do. And so then they become a challenge and people just don't have the time or, you know, the understanding. They just don't have the understanding of what dogs are and how they communicate and what their needs are. And we're, you know, we're fighting this fight with them all the time. You know, it's fire on fire, or petrol on fire, I should say. So it just becomes a bit of a challenge for people and they just can't cope.
Yeah.
Mm.
Actually, Robin Bates is one of the speakers, and he is on today, day 2, and he is talking about adolescent dogs and how to survive that period. So that's
Oh,
that's a
yeah,
good
yeah.
good interview. But Narita has actually asked a question, which was my next question anyway. So when somebody is adopting a dog from a shelter, what should they A, look out for, and B, what should they do when that dog first comes to their new home?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I think that we need to take into consideration when we're taking on a dog. And I thought that might actually be a question. So I did actually write sort of a list, and I don't know where it is, so we'll forget that. But yeah, I don't know where
Oh
it is. But
no.
I did write a list because I thought, yeah, that's going to be a question for sure.
You know
I
what's going
think,
to happen as soon as you get off, you'll go, oh, it was right here in front of me the whole time.
yeah, yeah. It's more than just saying I'm going to, I think I want to bring a dog into my home, you know. There's so many things that we have to consider. Do we have another dog in the home or 2 or 3 other dogs in the home? What is the age of the dog that we're looking at to adopt? Because that has a major impact on what can go on, especially if you have another dog in the home. So people talk a lot about the sex of the dog. For me, it's the age. So if you've got a very old dog that's frail and in pain, the last thing you want to do is bring a young dog in. That is just a nightmare. That's like me having a 2-year-old child running around my house. It would it's just not going to work. Um, and also things like, where do you live? If you live in an apartment with really a lot of crystal around, then a Great Dane or a Vizsla is probably not going to be the choice of dog, because their tail is going to just destroy everything. So do you like grooming? I personally don't.
No,
So therefore,
yeah.
the dogs that I tend to have are those short-coated dogs. Mind you, my last dog I took on was Chance, and he's a border collie. And so yeah, somehow I got caught up in the grooming thing. But clipping, like having to take your dog to the groomer every 3 months for a clip, those types of things are really important. What do you do for your activities? Are you a hiker? Then probably a Dachshund is not the type of dog that would suit your home. There's loads and loads of things that we need to think about before we get that dog. And certainly the age of the dog is really, really important. And then we've got things like young dogs coming in with other dogs, where this young dog hasn't had no previous experience with old dogs, because we know that young dogs should be raised around older dogs. That's so important. They learn so much from older dogs. It's like children learn so much from grandparents. And so it's important that they are exposed, puppies are exposed to those older dogs, in their younger years. That's really, really important, because that can create problems. Like I said, adolescent dogs heading into adulthood, that can be an issue for people. So thinking about that. And also having young dogs together. A lot of the time people think, oh, I've got excuse me, a 6-month-old dog. I think I'll get another 6-month-old dog. That can be a nightmare. I don't know if you've ever read Lord of the Flies. It was a book when we were around when we were kids, and that was a whole lot of young kids on an island without no adults, and that can be a problem. And the more time that you spend around dogs, you see how they communicate, and older dogs will certainly jump up and tell younger dogs when to pull their head in and behave themselves. Um, and also preparing your life, and I've got my list now, and things like this, it is a life-changing event for you, for the people in the home, as well as if you have existing animals and cats, thinking about cats as well. Some history of the dog may help, but a lot of the time, rescue places don't have that history. And even if they do, it may not necessarily be the truth.
Right.
So they're really not, they don't have a lot to go on. And of course, dogs in shelters don't behave the same as dogs in homes will behave.
Right.
It's
That's
very,
such an
very
important
different.
point, isn't it? Yeah.
Get out of that situation. Yeah. So they might be very shut down in the shelter, and then they get into a home and all of a sudden they explode, you know. So that's really important. Also, thinking about your home life and putting time aside. And I know every time I've contacted Nerida to take on a dog, Graham and I talk about it and we make sure that one of us is going to be home for this dog. That's really, really important for the dog. Not so much that it just has other dogs in the home, but that it has a person around. So putting time aside, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that I've faced in all the years that I've been working with people taking on dogs, is that they don't want to give up their time, their activities, or whatever that might be, to put aside for the dog. And sadly, we need to do that. We need to be there with that dog for at least the first 3, if not 6 months of their life. And I usually, it's usually 6 months for me with dogs. And also festive season. So this is not the time right now to be bringing in a dog or a puppy, for that matter, or a kitten or a cat or any other animal, because the festive season, there's so much going on, and not only, a lot of activities, but smells and sounds and, all that type of thing. It's very, very overwhelming for dogs. Especially those that have been through, like a really traumatic time. And also, putting friends and visitors on hold. And I think that's important, not having too many people around. It's like if you have someone that's just had a newborn baby, they don't want to be bombarded with a whole lot of visitors. They need to keep things quiet and let this dog just find its feet and settle in. Being prepared, just being prepared. And I have um, something that I say to myself every morning when I get out of bed: no expectations, no disappointment. And I think that's really important, because if you don't go into this with expectations of this dog, then you're not going to be disappointed by the behavior of this dog. A lot of times people have a certain breed that they really love, and then they go and they get that breed again, and it's nothing like the dog they had before, and they're disappointed. So no two dogs are the same. And taking things slowly is really important. So, just sitting back, observing, learning. They're learning about you. Dogs are watching all the time. They're watching how you speak, they're watching how you behave, they're watching when you get angry, they're watching when you get sad, they're learning about who you are. And so observation is huge in my world. Everything I do with dogs is about observation. I tend to sit back and watch before I do anything at all. Keeping noise to a minimum, obviously, is really important. And having all the things that you need. I'm amazed at how many people over the years have walked into the shop and said, I've just picked up a dog from the pound. I need a bowl, I need a harness, I need a lead. And I'm like, what? Oh, the dog's in the car. And it's like, no, 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 no. You should, those things should already be in your home. You should have all of those things prepared and ready to go, so that you don't have to leave the home. There's so many things to consider, because we're talking about the life of a living being. And for me, when I bring a dog into my home, it comes here for life. And no matter what issues, and I got to tell you, I've had a lot, no matter what issues, I face them and I deal with them, because it's my responsibility. They didn't ask to come and live with me. They didn't choose me. I chose them. And so therefore it's up to me to ensure that I give them the best life that I possibly can, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, there's that rule, they call it the 3-3-3 rule. Whereas I think it's 3 days to kind of settle in, 3 weeks to start feeling at home, and 3 months to really feel at home. But that's not quite right, but you get the idea. But yeah, that is such a generalization, isn't it? You can't go, well, it's 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
It should be fine by now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know who made that rule. I have seen that rule, and a lot of people think that's the case. But I can honestly say, I was talking to a friend the other day about a dog that she brought into a home that she had a lot of problems with, and at 6 months, 6 months that she'd had the dog, she was still having problems, and it's been 12 months, and she's only now just starting to see the dog of who she is. And I always say to people, at least 12 months. It's at least 12 months, and if you think back to someone that you were dating, when you first meet them, they're not the same person that they are now. I mean, Graham leaves his dirty clothes here and doesn't put the lid on it, those sorts of things. Whereas, do you know what I mean? Like, things change. And so I don't know where this 3-3-3 rule came from. Dogs have a lot to work through, and we don't know their history. And so, and the brain is like an internal database, or, for any of us oldies, they're a filing cabinet, And so when we're young, we store all sorts of information, and we draw on fearful information. So we always draw on fearful information. It's the survival mechanism in us. And that's really important for people to understand with dogs. So, we have a dog and we think everything's fine, and we take it out, and all of a sudden it's terrified of something, or it lunges at something, and we just think this is a bad dog, a disobedient dog, or whatever it might be. This is a dog that has a traumatic past. Something has triggered it, and we don't know what that is. So that's why sitting back and learning, and observing, and then, working through that day by day slowly. Yeah.
How important would you say it is to give the dog time to decompress, and also to give them a little place in the home that is their place, where they can retreat if they need to feel safe, and no one is allowed to bother them in that safe spot?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I can give you some examples of that. Many years ago, I bought in a greyhound called Dallas, and Dallas had been through a few homes, and he'd been rehomed because he'd bitten somebody, and they couldn't find him a home. So I just said, I'll take him. And I might add here, with me, I don't go to shelters. We talk about those memories. My memory of working at the RSPCA, I can't go to shelters. So I get a phone call saying, I've got this dog and it needs a home. And I'll just say, yeah, how old is it, or what is it, or whatever. And yeah, I'll take it, and I'll meet them on the side of the road somewhere. So for me, it's just, I bring this dog home. So with Dallas, straight away, I found he had a huge personal space. Being a greyhound, most of us know, the traumatic life that most greyhounds lead in their, racing career. And I had 6 other dogs at that time. And if any dog went near Dallas, he would attack them. And so we ended up putting a queen-size mattress in our lounge room. And Dallas would sleep on that bed, and no other dog would go anywhere near that bed. And so that's what we did for Dally. And, it worked really well. And then slowly he would allow other dogs on the bed. And then eventually he was sleeping with other dogs, and that was in his time. So, that's what I did. I don't use crates. I'm not a crate girl. I did. I had 7 crates in my house once upon a time, many years ago. I don't use them. I don't like them. So, you know, you can use a table with a blanket, you can use a big box. I mean, you can use, you know, a space under the bed if that's where the dog wants to go. I think for me, it's allowing the dog to choose where it wants to go. And they usually do. They'll find a spot in the house that's really comfortable. I've seen dogs go on, you know, into a bedroom and stay there for 5 days. And
Yeah.
if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. So, and we do have to educate children, you know, that there are no-go zones. There are times when, you know, we just don't go near them. And we allow them to come out of their shell slowly when they're ready. It's all in their time, not our time.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's the hard thing that people really struggle with, is doing it in their time. But we might go on to some questions, unless you've got some more you want to say before we hit the questions, like another example or.
Oh, I could talk all day, but that's all right. Actually, I will
Yeah.
just give you one more example and then we can go on to questions. Sorry, Ness. You
No,
get me
yeah,
started. There's no
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's soaking it up. Yeah.
Yeah, so just because I'm looking at Nerida's beautiful face there, a few years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago, I spoke to Nerida about a dog. I was thinking of getting another dog. Anyway, this little dog came up and she said, we just can't rehome her. She's been through all these homes and we just can't rehome her. So I said, all right, well, I'll take her. So I drove up and met Nerida halfway because she's up at Bundaberg, and picked up this little dog. Well, she was the cutest little thing you've ever seen. Cattle dog cross, Jack Russell, possibly a bit of Staffy in there. Cutest little thing. I'm quite passionate about the cattle dogs. So, yep, short-coated, little, you know, little and stocky. She's great. Brought her home, and then within probably about 15 minutes of being in my house, I noticed some very unusual behaviors. And so I sat back and watched these behaviors and I recorded her, I documented her behavior for a year. And she has obsessive compulsive repetitive loop behaviors like nothing I have ever experienced in my life. I've dealt with dogs chasing tails and light and all those types of things. But Phyllis is fascinating. Everything was done in threes and everything was done clockwise. So she'd go round a tree 3 times. She'd pounce from A to B, B to A to B, B to A, then go on from, you know, A to C, C to A. You know, I even set up activities where I put out sort of a whole lot of items for her and allow her to go and, you know, sniff them. And I did that 5 days in a row, and 5 days in a row, she actually did the same route. So she went to exactly the same item in the same route. She eats out of a bowl. It's very interesting. You know, she eats from one side of the bowl and completely cleans it in half, and then she goes to the other side of the bowl. So it's really like living with a person that, you know, has all the cans round the right way and the handles here and the towels are perfect. The obsessive compulsive behavior it's really disturbing. You know, she will chase light. She will chase anything fast moving. She'll spin round in circles. And, you know, I've spoken to a lot of people over that time about what to do with Phyllis, and some of the advice has just been outrageous, absolutely outrageous. I've sat in my yard in tears going, can I do this? You know, this is really traumatic for me. It's traumatic for her. It's traumatic for the other dogs in the house. And then I just sort of said to myself, Jenny, you have the tools, you know how to deal with this. And so with 3 years, I think, down the track now with her, so she's what, 5? And we still have these behaviors. And I've been working with her with applied zoopharmacognosy, self-selection, allowing her to choose the oils that she wants to choose. And we've come a long way. And I don't think we'll ever get rid of those behaviors. They're ingrained and something's not wired properly. But I'm dealing with it, and we're dealing with it.
Yeah.
And I could have been the 6th person in her home to just pass her on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, sooner or later, somebody, you know, she ends up in a shelter and they say, well, she's unadoptable, let's euthanize her, which, you know, would be very, very sad. But just before we get on to the questions, there's something I would like to explore a little bit more in depth with you that you mentioned. And I think it's a really, really important point is that, and it's we as humans do it too, is when we're talking about our memories and past trauma, that's the memories we fall back on more than the good memories. Can you
Yes.
maybe explore that a little bit more? Because I think that's really informative or instructional as to why dogs might do particular things that we don't want them to.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. It's a survival mechanism. You know, we learn that when we do something and something happens, then we store that memory. And of course, when we're young, you know, the brain is like a sponge, so we're really sort of taking that information in and putting it there. And so, what exactly do you want me to sort of to go on to, Ness? Like what?
Just you know,
How?
like how it might impact a dog's behavior, I guess.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it could be something very small or could be something very big. It could be just placing something over the dog's head, like a harness, for example, that could trigger a response from the dog because, you know, something has previously happened to it, and therefore, you know, we might be the type of person that you know, yells at the dog or somehow disciplines the dog because it's not standing still while we put, you know, the harness over its head. But there must have, you know, there may have been some trauma in its past to do with that. We may touch it in a certain spot. It can be loads of things when we're out walking. You know, it might see something that you don't even see that it reacts to.
yeah,
It may freeze. You know, we could be walking and all of a sudden it freezes and it won't move and we're, you know, dragging it or whatever we're doing to it. And there's, you know, there's a reason it's drawing on past memory. And yeah, past memory is huge. You know, I have a past memory of the dentist. And it took me a long, long, long time.
I'm sorry,
You
I
know,
shouldn't
like
laugh. I do a lot of dentist
it's
analogies with my separation anxiety stuff, and I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
dentists are
yeah, as a
scary.
child. Terrible experiences, terrible, terrible experiences. And it took me a long time to find a dentist that actually took the time to allow me to sit in the chair and not do anything, just sit in a chair. And I'm sweating and shaking and crying. I mean,
Wow.
it's real, you know, and people will say, oh, don't be ridiculous. But when you have a fear like that, it is very, very traumatic.
Yeah.
And it takes time. So I always I guess the best advice I could give in um, with this would be if my dog is behaving a certain way, or I request something of my dog and I don't get the response that I wanted, I don't say what's wrong with the dog. I say what's wrong with me. What am I doing that's creating the problem for that dog?
Mm,
I never blame the dog. I never
yeah.
blame the dog. I always look at what it is that's around us. What are the, you know, the repeat behaviors that I'm seeing that could possibly be the trigger for that dog? And it can be
Yeah.
something, it could be something tiny,
Yeah.
tiny. You know, a dog could be walking through a gate at some shelter or in a past house and be hitting the back end by a gate and it
Mm,
won't walk through a gate. And you're saying, well, why, it's just a gate. Like, why won't you walk through the gate? So we have to always sit back and think there's a reason for a behavior. There's always a reason for a
yeah.
behavior.
But we might not always know what that reason is. But something you said
No.
about the dentist made me think about something that we are that is, thank goodness, becoming more and more popular with dog training. And apparently there was a study done, I don't know who did it or how long ago it was, but Irene Bloom, who's a really, really good dog trainer, told me about this. And she said they did a study where people like yourself that are worried about going to the dentist, I mean, nobody likes going to the dentist. They gave the people autonomy to, for example, use a drill. So they got to choose when that drill, if it's a drill or whatever it was, when that drill would start working. And what they found was that the more choice and autonomy that that person had for that drill to be working, the more they were able to use it. So it had, because they were given the power, in a sense, maybe that's not the right word, but they were given control, choice and control over the situation. And that is something that is definitely creeping in a lot more with dog training. And by giving the dogs that choice and autonomy and control actually makes them more confident. And I think that would be, you know, I imagine with a new rescue coming in would be something, if we can give the dogs that ability, then how cool is that to help them gain that confidence?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that, because anyone that knows me will know that on any presentation, any piece of paper, I always say choice and curiosity equals confidence. And I mean, when I assess, you know, if someone's got a problem with a dog, it's brought into my no zone, which is an area I have at work, and I have enrichment in there. And we've got a camera in there as well, and I put all down a whole lot of items, depending on the dog, how many items I put down. If it's very fearful, I'll only put a few down. If it's you know, if it's a young dog, I might put a few more. If it's a puppy, I'll only put a few, you know, a few little ones down. And we sit back and we don't speak. We just observe. I teach people to shut their mouth, just shut
It's so hard to do.
Shut it and open the eyes and observe. And I'm looking for how many items the dog's going to, how curious they are with those items, how many of the items that they look at, so the percentage of items that they're looking at, and how often they come back to their human, so that I can sort of start to find out a little bit about how curious these dogs are. Because when you look at sort of the percentages of what, you know, and also how they investigate the items, and you'll sort of find different breeds will do it different ways, which is quite fascinating as well, you know. So some will sort of go around the outside, some will do zigzags through. So it really sort of gives me then a bit of an idea of, okay, we're working with a really fearful dog here. So therefore, we need to back off with the items and just put a couple of items out, make it really simple for the dog, allow them to be curious. And I love it when dogs do something, you know, and find something, and they look at you like, I did that. Like, I did that myself. Like, did you see that? You know, and that's just wonderful. And I think
That's powerful.
curiosity
Yeah.
and freedom of choice is just, it's everything to dogs. And that's why, you know, when I say to people, that's how I work. I allow dogs to be curious and I give them freedom and choice. And people say, oh, so what, you just let dogs do anything? And I go, well, no, I don't. But I think we control dogs enough in our environment. So we need to give back, and we can do that in some incredible ways. Yeah.
So we might get on to some questions. So the first one is from Sam. Sam has a 17-month-old American Pit Bull. 6 months now. I guess you mean you've had it for 6 months. You're the fourth home, has separation anxiety, very anxious. Best way to handle this, please. We have also decided that he should stay with us indefinitely. Well, thank you for adopting your beautiful boy. Let's remember, Sam, that he, is it a he or a she? He. 17, still a teenager, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, you're not looking at the, you know, the brain fully developing until sort of 2.5, they become adults. So you've got a long way to go, and you've got those ages and stages of development in there as well. So you're sort of around one right now. And well done for adopting this dog. I think that's absolutely amazing, and that you're dedicating to keeping this dog no matter what. I think that's really important. Separation-related problems, they are really, really difficult. Ness is an expert in that area, and I will down the track be looking at more of her work and what she does. I brought a dog into my home with really severe separation-related problems, and I will just say, one of the things please don't do is get another dog because you think that that will help this dog cope with those separation related problems. No, you'll just end up with two dogs in the same in the same position. One of the things, and I'm probably stepping on Nessa's toes a little bit, but one of the things that I learned and have applied to quite a few dogs with this particular problem is, and I just noticed it myself in my own home. When I leave my home, I have an entry area and it has a small window. And I always pull the blind down when I leave my home. And so all of a sudden, I realized that the dogs know when I'm leaving for good because the blind goes down. And then when I come home, the blind goes up. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And I had heard a behaviorist talk about, leaving something at the door. So I've worked a lot with dogs where we've put up a blue towel over a baby gate, or we've hung a blue towel on a hook near the door. And we have to be really, consistent with this. So, leaving something, and I use blue because dogs can see blue. They're not very good at seeing, reds and those types of colors. So blue is a great color, or purple, those deep colors. And I've used that and it's worked really well, where I hang that up or pull that blind down. And I did that with little Chance as well, the pup. If I was going up to the garage or whatever, I'd pull the blind down. He can see it. He knows it goes down. He knows I'm leaving. When I come back, I open it up again. It's just one of 1,000 things that you have to do with separation related issues, but it's worked really well. So
yeah, that visual cue can help. Yeah.
Visual cues. Yeah. I guess that's sort of the main problem that Sam has with this dog, as well as the stage of development, which is, really quite challenging. The other things I guess that we need to think about with our dogs is equipment. And I'm really passionate about equipment. If we have things on our dogs, and there are thousands of different harnesses out there, but are they all good? And this is another topic for another day. But not all harnesses are great because they restrict the dogs. They cause pain. Collars on dogs. There's some vital organs in that neck that we really need to look at and think about. And you can find some information on my website about that. But we have to think about those things, because when you're in pain, it causes fear, frustration, and anger. And we can get responses to that from dogs as well. So think about the length of your lead, think about the equipment that you're using, think about how you're dealing with these separation related problems. Dogs don't wear watches, so they don't, leaving the house for 5 minutes is not going to work, or 10 minutes, because dogs don't work like that. I actually have a procedure, and I'm very happy to share that with you if you want to contact me, where I sort of use a step guide with these types of things to slowly work dogs up to you being able to, leave the room, leave the house, leave the front yard, and so on, so on. There's
Yeah,
lots of different things you need to do.
The other thing
And enrichment.
Enrichment, yeah. Sam, the other thing you've got to think about is as you know, he's been through, you're the fourth home. So, we get that they're clingy. I would say with a dog, when you first bring it into the home with separation anxiety is, if you think about a toddler in a pool, you want to teach them to swim. You're not going to take them up to the deep end. So we don't want to go out and leave them straight away. I know this is kind of after the fact for you, but you would take them into the shallow end and build their confidence. And it's all about building confidence. But I will be running my talk is on day 5. I'll be running a seminar on the back of that next week. So just stay tuned for that. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you. Now, Stephanie says my rescue dog was 8 years old in a shelter. Gosh. Oh, sorry, your rescue dog was in a shelter for 8 years. Is that what you mean, Stephanie? Oh my goodness. You're his fourth home, and another fourth home. He was on the euthanasia list. Oh my goodness, Stephanie. So I find it really hard to think of a dog living its life in a shelter for that amount of time, if that's what you mean. Or do you mean Oh, anyway, it doesn't matter. But thank you for rescuing your dog. Him. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, because that's something I don't know how you feel about this, Jenny, because you've taken, on a lot of rescues, but as I get older, I don't think I would like to just get older dogs and bring them into my home and make them, have their last years in a safe, secure, loving family, well, environment. Because they're the ones that are hardest to adopt, I guess. Is that your experience, Jenny?
Um, yeah, I think everybody's sort of out to get puppies or these young dogs.
8 years in a
I
shelter.
really,
Sorry, Stephanie just commented.
yeah,
Yeah, 8 years. Wow.
I really take my hat off to. Where is Stephanie?
I'm not sure. Where are you,
Is she
Stephanie?
Greece or Spain or somewhere? No,
No,
America.
Artemis is
No.
from Greece. I'm sure she'll write in a sec. See if she's
Yeah, so
Belgium.
it's
She's
not
in
unusual.
Belgium.
Belgium, yeah, okay. Yeah, it's not unusual to hear this. It's really not. In a lot of countries, this is what's happening because there are so many dogs going through rescue. And so, for an 8-year-old, if I was bringing an 8-year-old dog into my home and it was its fourth home, um, look, just enjoy your time together,
Yeah,
slow walks in the bush,
that's
slow
nice.
walks along the beach, lots of treat searches, lots of calm activities, reading books together, just some beautiful, having some other dog friends to be able to go out and have some little social walks, nice, calm, relaxing activities. This dog's been through a lot. So,
What a big change. If
yeah,
you spent 8 years in a shelter,
yeah,
it would be such
yeah.
a mind-blowing experience to move into a home, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I guess actually that's something else that I'd just quickly touch on too, now that you said that, is we also need to think about dogs that have never seen stairs before, or dogs that have never seen a dog door before, or dogs that have never been in a house before. They've never
Yeah,
heard a television before. They've
right.
never heard
Yeah.
a phone before. I've had many dogs here that have had trouble with stairs, and how I solved that was I actually videoed my dogs walking up and down stairs, and then I slowed that video right down, so I could actually see how dogs use stairs, because we just think dogs walk upstairs. But it's quite interesting to watch how dogs move upstairs. And little Gracie May here, the little greyhound, I actually had to sit on the bottom step and place each foot on the step for her, and then slowly just allow her to work out how to move those feet independently to move up the steps. So these are things that we have to really think about, when we bring them into our home. Do we have to build a ramp? Um, you know, eh, there's so many things, so many
And
things.
I guess with especially, I know, I'm not sure about other countries, but I know in the UK, and Zoe might be able to answer this, but they rescue a lot of dogs from the streets in Romania, places like Romania and
They
Spain.
do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of those dogs probably never been in a car either. It's
No,
huge. So,
no. And then they're brought into this world that is completely different. Yeah, that's a whole different
or a
topic. Yeah,
lead, yeah. They've never been on a lead or anything. Yeah, it's
yeah,
a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, oh, sorry. Stephanie says I adopted also his cage mates. Oh, wow. And they spend their lives for 5 years. Oh, that's lovely. They've been together 5 years. You couldn't separate them. Oh, that's beautiful,
She's a
Stephanie.
good person.
Yeah,
She's a
yeah,
good person.
yeah.
I think
Oh,
Ingrid's got a question there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I was
is it
just
Ingrid?
getting to that. So, as much as we are learning about gut and behavior, yes, I'm wondering if asking adopters to keep the animal on the same diet they are getting in the shelter, while not ideal for a brief period, would be helpful. That's a great question. Or should we be trying to get them sorry, there's a thing there. Get them off of that diet as soon as possible. Having worked in a shelter for 10 plus years, that is one thing we saw a lot, gut distress as soon as they went home. Ah, interesting. And diet was changed, and then they are returned because the doctors did not want to deal with the mess. Wow. Good question.
Great question, and it's one I get asked a lot, obviously, because I manufacture raw food and I'm very much into nutrition. So whenever I bring a dog into my home, or I'm helping people that have brought dogs into their home, so for me, they go straight on to complete meal, my food. I don't care what they've been on before, but I'm not bringing that food into my house. So they go straight on to a raw diet. We also have to think about chemical overload, because normally when they're coming out, you know, they've had vaccinations or worming, all this, you know, total chemical overload. There are things that we can do to help. We can start off, you know, when dogs are on a kibble diet, their pH gut is going to be very different. So it's going to be more alkaline than acidic. So dogs that are fed a raw diet are going to be more acidic. So for that reason, I don't feed dogs when they first come into my home bones, because I find that they will have a bit of trouble breaking those down because the gut is definitely out of balance. Diarrhea is quite a normal thing. It's not a bad thing. If it goes on for weeks and weeks, then there's an issue. But most dogs that, you know, are coming out of traumatic situations, and let's face it, shelters are traumatic places for dogs, even great ones, then they're going to have diarrhea probably anyway because they've got an upset tummy. So I tend to take it really easy with them, and I tend to sort of feed the same protein for a little while. That's what I do, so that I'm not bouncing the gut around with a whole lot of different things, and I keep it very basic. I don't add anything into the food anyway, because I work with cell selection, so I'm not very big on adding all these probiotics and everything into food. And you will find that normally it depends on the age of the dog. If I'm working with a dog that comes through that's an older dog and a very sick dog, then we might transition slowly over a week or two, maybe. But if it's a young dog and it's a healthy dog, then it's out with the old, in with the new. For me, I keep them off bones for a week or two, just feed them, and I feed them well. And I also allow them to eat, you know, as much as they feel they want to eat, because dogs are very dehydrated. I've found when they come out of shelters, they're very, very you know, they're lacking a lot of nutrition and also hydration. So they really want to get that food in, and then they start to balance out a little bit more. So the other argument to that for me is, if I picked a dog up off the side of the road, I wouldn't know what it was fed before, so I'd just be feeding it raw anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah, makes sense.
really, it really depends on the health of the dog, I think. But if you're a raw feeder, then feeding kibble would be very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. Sherry says, I'm staying with my sister's 3-year-old port water dog for 50 days soon. My sister is in the last year, suffers from complex PTSD, and now the dog is very reactive. Oh, I have ideas for walks, but what about her attacking the TV when there's animals running, yelling? She goes crazy attacking the TV.
Okay, so you're staying with this 50 water dog for 50 days soon. So how long have you had the dog for? How long is this a rescue dog?
So she's staying with her sister. So her sister's dog.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess with that little bit of information, you know, sometimes it's
She
difficult to
bought the
answer
dog as a
questions.
puppy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to answer questions because I work in videos, not
Right.
pictures. So yeah, I always want to sort of see what happened before, what happened after, and then I get, what's happening in the middle. When you just see a picture of something, or like if you read a picture of something, it's very difficult to know what's going on. So just from that, Sherry, you've got some ideas for walks. So walks for me would be very, very slow, calm places where this particular dog doesn't have to deal with a lot of things going on around it, so cars and people and bikes and, all those sorts of things. So I'd be finding some really, really quiet areas. I'd be getting hold of a very long lead, and I'd be allowing this dog to just walk and sniff, because when dogs are moving slowly in a 4-step gait, so 1, 2, 3, 4, when they're actually walking and they've got their nose down, they're releasing those feel-good hormones. So they're decreasing those arousal hormones and increasing those feel-good hormones. Walking and sniffing is an incredible thing for dogs to do. It's amazing. And just going places and sitting, having a cup of coffee and just sitting quietly with the dog. And probably with the television, this is going to be difficult, but if I had a dog, for example, Phyllis, I noticed, would react to certain things on the television goes off, because there's no point in trying to deal with this situation by stopping the dog from, attacking the television. You've got to go right back to the beginning and work your way through. So you might have to watch TV on a laptop somewhere rather so than, on a big screen. That's certainly what I would be doing for now. And, going right back to where's all this coming from? And obviously your sister suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which is just terrible. This would also be having a knock-on effect with the dog too.
Huge.
So
Yeah.
you might need to seek some really good professional advice. Probably not just your standard trainer, but I would be, reaching out to get somebody that's going to help you sort of work through this very, very slowly. This is not training. This is lifestyle.
Whereabouts are you, Sherry? Because if you shoot me an email, I might be able to find someone in your area or your sister's area to help you with that. Yeah. But Sherry also says there are a few rescues that will pay for meds, vets, if you take an older dog just to get them into a loving home, they would have to pay for that anyway. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're in Canada. Okay. Mate, shoot me an email, Sherry, and I'll see if I can find somewhere where you are. Just write in the email where it is. Oh, can everyone hear me? Because it says my internet connection is unstable. Okay. Oh, good. Cool. Yeah. So interesting that a few rescues give meds, but yeah. Stephanie said I adopted also his. Oh yeah, we read that one. Ingrid, Ingrid said she thought you were going to videotape the stairs, and I did too, to be honest, Ingrid. And then play it for the dog on the TV. I thought you were going to play it for the dog on the TV so the dog could learn. And we're going to let the dog watch it using their mirror. And yeah, I did. Watch
Oh my
how it's
goodness, no.
done.
No, I look, right. I mean, I had my IT guy put 4 terabytes in my PC, right? Because I video everything, and slow it down. I video, whenever I do a consult, I take the dog out for a walk first with the owner, obviously, and I video the gait of the dog, because that will start me off on a journey of what are we dealing with here? Because dogs, 80% of dogs are suffering in pain. And
Yeah.
so I video everything. I learn through videoing. You can do courses, you can read books, but the best way to learn what's going on with your dog, and I get all of the people to do it, and they're interested, they start learning, about how does their dog move and what's actually going on, and then that's where that journey starts. So videoing is a great way to learn about what you do and where your mistakes are as well. like, oh my goodness, why did I do that? And also dogs. When I
Yeah.
started learning about calming signals, I went and sat at dog training places, off-leash areas. I just sat there videoing. And then I would come home and slow them down and look at it. And that's how I learnt. Well, obviously I learned through Turid Regis, but that's how I learned. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think video taping the dog and understanding their body language and all that stuff so important, but being able to videotape yourself as well, because some people are really expressive with their hands, and for a dog that's just come out of a shelter and needs to decompress, they don't need us waving our arms around. We need to be a little bit more still and calmer and things, so that could be really helpful as well from the human perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyone
Definitely.
got any more
Absolutely.
questions? Otherwise, Jenny, have you got any final words? We've probably kept you too long. Have you got appointments?
No, I haven't actually. I'm home today, so
Oh,
no, I don't have to be anywhere, which is really good. No, I think I really admire those that take on those surrendered dogs. And I really admire those people that work in rescue. It's not something that I could ever do. I'm really happy to help with those particular dogs. But as far as actually working in a rescue shelter or with foster care, I couldn't do it. It's just I don't have the emotional strength for it. I find it really traumatic. So I take my hat off to all of you that work in it and that take these dogs on. And I guess I would just like to say my parting words are, don't give up on them. Just don't give up. Reach out,
get
reach
help.
out to somebody. You're not alone. And I mean, I'm always here. You can get hold of me via Facebook, email. I mean, if you're in Australia, you can get hold of me via phone. I'm
You do
always here to help.
online
Don't give
consultation?
up.
Do you do
Yeah, I
online?
do.
Yeah. So let's
I'm
put your
starting to
website in the
now. Yeah.
chat. It's
Yeah.
www
Completepet.com,
yeah,
completepet.com.au.
.com.au. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So anybody that wants to reach out to Jenny, please do. And yeah, she'll be able to give you an online consultation if you're not in Queensland, Australia, where we are
Yeah.
sweltering, by the way. It's so hot. I've got the air conditioning on. I see Narida's got her fan on, and you must be even hotter up there because it's hot in Bundaberg. You're further up north. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jenny, so much for joining us. It was a great conversation and lovely to talk to you again. And yeah, and your summit talk is on day 4. So I think I said, didn't I?
Yeah. Yeah, day 4. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ness. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.